Hello fellow bike people. I gotta do some disassembly on this bike before I talk about it, so bear with me for a second.
Smoking deal there, right?
Okay, problem area revealed. Now I want to show you why I chose this bike. As for how damaged a bike can be, how much wear and tear it can take before I think it's worn out, this is about at the limit, so let me talk about this. As much as it's kind of hard to see in this lighting, there is a big dent in the left side of the top tube on this bike. And the down tube is an absolute mess. Whoever owned this bike before I did not treat it very well. Got dents all down here, dents in the chain stays, dents in the top tube, scratches everywhere. And whatever that pink goop is that seems kind of like paint, like it's almost as if somebody plasti dipped it and then enameled the plasti dip in place. Ugh. So obviously this thing's beat up, but it's a Kink Nathan Williams help frame. This bike was not even sold as a complete bike. It was only sold as an aftermarket frame, and this frame was only released in, I think, 2020 or 2021. It is a brand spanking new model. It's just super beat up. But I genuinely think that doesn't matter on a bike like this because it's made out of the highest end chromoly steel. It's heat treated. It's extra thick where it needs to be extra thick. It's only thin where it needs to be thin. Really, modern BMX bikes are crazy good designs. The R&D that's gone into them over the past couple decades basically applies to all of them, and if it's full chromoly from a brand name, there's no such thing as a bad BMX bike. Now, Nathan Williams specifically, the man's an absolute beast. Watch any of his riding. He rides harder than 99% of the pros out there. He abuses bikes, and this frame is built to take his level of riding. So I theorize that even with a few dents, I'm not going to be able to damage this bike any more than it already is. I'm gonna let that dry for a bit. Yeah, that was a really quick, cheap spray job. That's not intended to look perfect, but this bike is never gonna look perfect no matter what I do. I just wanted to cover up that nasty pink stuff and some of the scratches from underneath. So now I want to talk about some of the parts on there while that thing dries. So I pulled the cranks off. These are just plain, basic pinch bolt cranks. They're what comes on your average, entry-level BMX bike, a complete BMX. They're perfectly fine, but they come loose pretty easily. You have to tighten these things all the time. And that sprocket is 25 teeth. Personally, I prefer a slightly wider gear ratio on a BMX and a heavier feel, so I go for 28 tooth. To that end, I have a very old set of cranks that I ran on a previous setup. So Redline device cranks, these are press fit instead of pinch bolt, so much stronger design. And here's one for my early 2010s BMXers out there. Remember these tree sprockets? These are bomb-proof. I remember their whole advertising campaign was, look how old our sprockets can be and they still work. Yeah, this thing is, I'm guessing this is from, at the newest, like 2007, 2008, and it's still perfectly fine. So I'm going for that crank and sprocket combination. You also saw me pull the chain. This is a half-link chain. I don't like half-links. Now, there are good half-links out there. The best one is made by Shadow Conspiracy, and those are great chains, but they're expensive. The thing about cheaper ones like this one is labeled as a Salt Plus, made by PYC, which is a pretty standard chain manufacturing company, just like KNC or any of those. It's an okay quality product, but if you think about it, your average chain link, 2 outer links, 2 inner links, 2 outer links, 2 inner links, and each link is just a flat piece of metal. Its strength is part of its, inherent characteristics. With these half links, instead of it being outer links, inner links riveted together, each link is like that. It's an inner and an outer. So as you pedal, they want to stretch out. So they don't last anywhere near as long as a traditional chain. The benefit to a half link is it lets you really fine tune your back end length, like exactly where your rear wheel sits in the dropouts. That can be fine tuned by using a half link. Personally, I'm not a huge fan though. I'm going for one of these old school, heavy duty, just plain, shiny KMC 510s. Yeah, they're a little heavy, but the nice thick links mean you don't have to worry about these things. And I like the shiny silver look better than the blue.
sound right, boy. Check the mic and make sure it sound right, boy.
19, 17. We're going with 17 because it looks better. Now these are the last thing I'm torn about for the minute. These are Odyssey Twisted PCs, which are pretty much the standard go-to plastic BMX pedal. The problem is these ones are a little bit worn out on top, so they're not as grippy as they used to be. But the big thing is the bearings and cones inside are not as happy as they once were. So I've actually tightened these up already. You can pull the cap off of here and tighten everything up from the inside, but they're still a little bit rattly. And I think that, in combination with the fact that the pins are a bit worn out, so they're not super grippy, and that spray paint, that's not an original color, I think I'm going to leave the bike with no pedals for now and install some later today when I get home. So I guess time for bike check? No, you know what? That doesn't work for me. Doing the bike check with the bike not completed, no pedals, no pegs, and indoors with lighting doesn't quite work for me. So I'm gonna do this properly. So as you can see, I put pedals on it. Those are from a brand called Fixation. They are basically a generic, fixie mountain bike BMX flat pedal. They are pretty slim, low profile, they're nice and lightweight, they're plenty grippy. They're not from a fantastic brand name, but I don't care. They're BMX pedals. They're basically disposable. And obviously 4 pegs, because it's a street bike. It just doesn't work right without pegs. Personally, I'm not a fan of them, and I'm not very good at doing tricks with pegs, but when it's a true street build like this, you gotta add pegs. Those are old Odyssey M pegs. So nice chromoly setup, they slide pretty well, they're not super heavy. I like those pegs. If you're gonna put pegs on a bike, something like that's awesome. So yeah, I think that's it for in here. I'm gonna take the bike outside, do some nice pictures of it out there, and do a proper bike check. And then I'm gonna get to the important bit, which is actually riding the bike. Because, I'm pretty confident that those dents on the frame, they're not gonna affect it in the slightest in terms of strength, but I still gotta prove that. So yeah, I'm gonna try and get some riding footage. Thankfully, we're supposed to get a nice warm day in like 2-3 days from now, so hopefully this video won't take too much longer. It's still pretty cold out here because it's February, but it's been worse. So I'm gonna go and try and ride this thing. It's been quite a while since I've ridden BMX, and yeah, this is where the excuses start. So I'm pretty rusty, and yeah, it's pretty slippery out there, so I don't know how crazy I'm gonna be able to go on this thing. There's also no brakes on this bike, which I'm really not used to. A lot of my tricks on BMX bikes kind of depend on having a brake. Yeah, we're gonna figure this out. We're gonna see how a modern geometry BMX bike handles and see if that damage makes any difference to the bike, which I really doubt it will. Alright, so this is gonna be my first test. I love these like hardened ice piles. So when it gets a little warmer, it melts a bit and some ice forms, they get this hard layer, so a lot of the time these are strong enough to ride a bike on. So I'm gonna give it a try, see what happens with this thing. Well, it's softer than I imagined, but I'm thinking I may be able to like jump on it, stall in the soft stuff, then pop back off. Let's see. So close, but the slippery bit got me. Ah! That definitely didn't help with the wet feet, but let's see if it helps with the smoothness. It worked in the end. It was kind of sloppy, but here's something I'm noticing. With this type of really modern geometry, the back end on the bike is super short. So the distance between where the axle bolts in here and the center of the bottom bracket here, that's crazy short. Now on the bikes I'm used to, they're all a bit older. Like the newest bike I've owned before this one was I think 2015 or so. So new-ish, but not super modern. Still has a way longer back end, so I've never really run into issues of clipping my ankles on the pegs. Now I don't really like using pegs on BMX bikes in the first place, but that's mostly because when you slip off you can clip your shins or other parts of your leg on them really bad, and that hurts. So I'm just not a fan of them. Also with my bad wrist, the impacts or grinds kind of hurt, so it's not my favorite tricks in the first place. In this case, it's actually so short, it's inconvenient unless you're used to it. So I think I may have to take those pegs off. Yeah, I'm at the GO station now. This is one of my favorite places to ride because this back bit here, it's really pretty. You usually get good light and it's usually pretty quiet. So as long as nobody tells me I'm disturbing them, I'm just gonna stay here. See, there's a weird one. Those like can endos, those are usually something I'm really comfortable with. I don't know why, I just can't do them on this bike. But overall, it's pretty damn good. Like the really low end beat up back wheel definitely needs a repack. So it's really rough. You can feel it when you're riding kind of thing, and it like flicks and pops a bit. But that's the big problem with low end BMX wheels. Normal bikes, they use 9/4 inch ball bearings on each side of the hub, so, you know, decently sized bearings. These things use like 22 16th inch bearings, so tiny little things, really easy to mess up and get out of place. Any little scoring on them will make the hub feel bad. So I'll do what I can with it later. The frame though, feels super solid. No creaks, no sloppy feeling. Everything's still nice and aligned, so despite all of the dents, you know, it still rides perfectly straight, like nice and accurate. I really like the geometry for a certain riding style. It's really responsive. I'm a little bit more lazy with how I like to ride. I don't know if lazy is the right term, maybe more loose. So you have to be really on it to ride a bike like this. But it's fun. I just have one thing that kind of seems unusual to me. I really like a 28:9 gear ratio on most BMX bikes. Normally it feels good to me. I don't know why it is, but it feels extra heavy on this bike. Now there's no actual resistance from the back wheel, same with the bottom bracket. The bottom bracket is actually nice and smooth. So it's not like there's a mechanical problem. It's, I assume, something to do with the geometry of the bike. Maybe the shorter back end gives you like less torque on the chain because there's less chain to pull or something. If somebody is a bit more familiar with the, what's the word, kinesiology, kinesthetics, whatever it is, of why that would be, let me know down in the comments because I'm actually pretty curious. For now though, I think I'm going to try a couple more things and then head back because I'm getting cold and I'm already pretty confident with this bike, so I think I've proved my point to myself at least. Yeah, I'm pretty happy with this. I think I'm done for the day. So I'm obviously going to keep testing this thing because this is nowhere near enough riding time to really see what it's like. But I must say I'm pretty happy with it. Despite the damage, still runs really nice, feels solid, feels confident, everything's perfectly straight on the frame. So I think nothing to worry about there. And I mean, let's look at how heavy duty some of this thing is. Those dropouts are monstrously thick. So it's designed to take some abuse. Now the big question for me is what am I gonna do with this bike when I'm done with it? because I would love to make it another donation bike with the GLE movement or Mississauga Cycles, but there's a lot of dents on this thing, and I'm not sure if somebody would be happy to accept that. There is also the issue of the brake mounts for this are not impossible to find, but they're a little tricky at the moment because there's a general parts shortage in the bike world. Same as in automotive, computers, all that. Shipping supply issues, like, you know how it is. So I may try to sell it. I'm just gonna have to be like totally transparent about the amount of damage it has. I might try and pick up another frame to put all these parts on and donate it like that. We'll see what happens. I'll figure it out. And just last thing to wrap up the video, Project Used Bikes is totally coming back. I've already got a bunch of donation bikes set up, so I'm working on one right now. Really nice Rocky Mountain sole. That should be the next video I have out. There's that Rocky Mountain, there's this BMX bike, there is a collection of really nice vintage road and cruiser bikes that was donated. So all kinds of things that I'm gonna be filming and getting on this YouTube channel before I get them out to the GLE movement and Mississauga Cycles.